So this is my presentation on recovery, and recovery allows for your body to heal and repair itself back to homeostasis to ready you for your next performance in your sport. Recovery includes the process of restoration, where we have our body regulated back to normal levels. Resynthesize, where we will store our energy sources, whether it be ATP used for muscle contractions or our glucose levels. Recovery also includes repairing our bodies, such as healing our muscles and sending blood to fatigued muscles and the brain. Recovery can take different amounts of time due to the intensity of the exercise and type of sport that is being participated in. This is because invasion games such as football and rugby will have stoppages built into the game where our bodies can recover a small space of time so that we can then go out and perform at a high standard again. So EPOC stands for excess post-exercise oxygen consumption and is shown in the graph on the screen in both submaximal and maximal exercise. EPOC is the amount of extra oxygen we consume compared to our resting levels, and this helps in our recovery as we are able to quickly use that extra oxygen to rid of waste products such as carbon dioxide and lactic acid. In submaximal exercise such as 800 meters, our recovery is shorter due to how we also have a lower oxygen deficit. Oxygen deficit means that we have a temporary shortage of oxygen whilst we exercise. In submaximal exercise, we have a smaller deficit due to how we are working aerobically, and this means that we will start a lactic recovery where we can begin to resynthesize ATP and PC. During maximal exercise such as a 100-meter sprint, the oxygen deficit is larger as we are working anaerobically and aren't using as much oxygen, which means we have a larger oxygen or shortage and deficit. Because of this bigger oxygen deficit, we'll have a longer lactic acid recovery where we will begin to recover from the buildup of lactic acid. Fast components are part of the lactic recovery when we work aerobically and recover quickly. As we have this smaller oxygen deficit, we have a smaller EPOC so that we can recover faster. This extra oxygen consumption allows for us to resaturate myoglobin and hemoglobin with oxygen. This is important as myoglobin is used to take O2 to the mitochondria for exercise, and hemoglobin is also important to be resaturated as it is needed to carry oxygen to the working muscles to power their contractions. It takes around 1 to 2 minutes for us to inhale half a litre of oxygen, which is enough to resaturate myoglobin and hemoglobin 100%. This is why stoppages in invasion games such as football are important, as you can resaturate these components when you're waiting for, say, the ball to be retrieved after it has been kicked out of play. The large EPOC also allows for the resynthesization of ATP and PC stores. The graph on shows how PC or ATP is diminished during exercise and then how it is replenished during recovery. It takes approximately 30 seconds to replenish 50% of PC, and it takes a minute to restore 75%. To fully resynthesize the PC, it takes around 3 minutes, using up to 3 to 4 litres of oxygen. Again, this is why stoppages such as waiting for an injured player to receive medical attention in rugby are important. It gives your body time to restore the PC levels so you can continue at a high standard. Slow components are the reason that we take longer to recover after maximal exercise, and this is called the lactic acid recovery. We take longer to recover due to how, for one, we will have to rid of carbon dioxide. We have a bigger buildup of carbon dioxide when we exercise due to how working muscles convert the oxygen into the CO2. We exhale the dioxide as it will diffuse from the muscle cells where oxygen has been converted into it, and the CO2 will then diffuse into the capillaries and latch onto the hemoglobin where it creates a carbon hemoglobin, 23% of that carbon dioxide. This is because hemoglobin has a higher affinity to the CO2 than oxygen. The low partial pressure of the CO2 in the capillaries and the high partial pressure in the muscles will also help the diffusion into the capillaries. The CO2 will move into where there is a low partial pressure. The hemoglobin then carries the CO2 up to the alveoli, where it diffuses into the lungs and is exhaled out. 70% of that CO2 is converted into carbonic acid that is carried in the blood's plasma, where it combines with water, and then the last 3% of the CO2 is then dissolved in the plasma itself. Lactic acid is another slow component result of the lactic acid recovery, and it is produced during anaerobic glycolysis in our muscle sarcoplasm, which is the breaking down of glucose into pyruvate. However, when we are working anaerobically, the enzyme lactate dehydrogenase will convert the pyruvate into lactic acid. However, when we start using oxygen to exercise, the lactic acid can in fact be converted back into pyruvate. 65% of that lactic acid that is built up will be converted back to pyruvate. Due to the lactic acid turning back into pyruvate, we can then carry on the Krebs cycle, so we can start producing ATP to power muscle contractions. We can convert lactic acid as it travels to the liver via the blood's vessels with gluconeogenesis, where gluconeogenesis will take place. And this is where the Cori cycle is introduced, as this is when the two processes of glycolysis and the gluconeogenesis work simultaneously to break down glucose, convert lactic acid to pyruvate, and convert that pyruvate to glucose for the process to be repeated. So the lactate arrives in the liver via the blood, and the liver will reoxidize the lactate to pyruvate, and this is where gluconeogenesis takes place, as the pyruvate will be converted into glucose, so the process can be repeated. 5% of the lactate is converted to glucose via the gluconeogenesis, and 20% of the converted glucose will be stored in muscles. 10% is also an extra turned into protein. Lactic acid is also broken down to be removed from the body by hydrogen carbonate, which weakens the lactate, and this is named lactate buffering. This will later form carbon dioxide and water during the Krebs cycle, which are both eliminated via being exhaled from the lungs. Muscle glycogen is important in how it is needed to function energy systems to help resynthesize ATP to give muscles energy to contract. Our stores of glycogen will begin to deplete after 2 hours of exercise. However, taking part in high intensity sport for a short duration, such as 200-meter sprints, the muscle glycogen will be restored. It takes 48 hours, however, for you to restore your muscle glycogen after participating in long duration, low intensity sports such as marathons. You can keep glycogen stores built up as you exercise. Sports drinks such as Lucozade contain already broken down forms of glycogen, which is steadily available straight after consumption. There are ways to speed up the restoration of muscle glycogen after you've participated, such as eating high carbohydrate meals, and this will help increase glycogen storage, especially as muscle cells are most receptive to the carbohydrates after the first 2 hours you train. Metabolic needs. So after you exercise, you inhale more oxygen for organs such as the heart and the respiratory muscles. Your breathing rates higher, and this is so that we can get back to homeostasis and our normal resting levels. Go back to the resting levels, cardiac output, ventilation, and our body temperature. And our heart needs the extra oxygen so that it can slow down its heart rate as the muscles aren't working or using as much oxygen to power the contractions. This means that the heart can slow down and allow for our end diastolic volume to properly fill and then be sent to the alveoli to diffuse into the hemoglobin to fully saturate. And because the EDV has filled, this means that more blood can carry saturated hemoglobin and be sent to deprived muscles. It is important that you participate in an active recovery or cool down after exercising, and this is to help fully recover your body, such as speeding up lactate removal, helping avoid blood pooling, and decrease your delayed onset muscle soreness, usually felt a few hours after participating. And ways to do an active recovery come under therapies such as cryotherapy and hydrotherapy. Cryotherapy is the use of ice and the cold to help decrease tissue metabolism, get rid of pain and spasms in the muscles. Types of cryotherapy you could do to help the recovery would be the use of ice baths or cooling gel and ice packs. Usually after someone's just come off substituted in football, you'd see them have an ice pack applied to, say, their hamstring, just to cool that down, to stop pain and spasms. Types of hydrotherapy though, or how you recover using water. It will help you recover after exercise, as swimming can utilize all muscles and to avoid blood pooling, and that can speed up removal of lactic acid as well when you're using all the muscles. The water also creates resistance so that you can move slowly and you don't painfully make any jolting actions that will create new injuries or make the old injuries worse. So yeah,